the East Coast. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this so I don't get distracted about myself. Hope things are great where you are. It's, hey, spring is going to happen very soon. And in just a week or so, that's hard to believe. It's going to be spring already. Anyway, it is March 14th and 2017. We have a new administration in Washington, and I think that's going to have some impacts about best places to live. I'm going to go ahead and get into that because I think it's pretty interesting the way this is sort of shaking out, so to speak. But I want to go ahead and answer a couple of questions first. I'm going to go ahead and jump in and talk to Sandra. I've put her off for a couple of times in dealing specifically with her question. She is living in, I'm not sure where she's living right now, but she's taking a break from shoveling snow from their nor'easter. So I'm guessing she's somewhere in the Northeast corridor, somewhere maybe New York, Massachusetts, somewhere in that area, digging out from that. Sounds like they had a brutal, another brutal snowstorm hitting them. So anyway, Sandra wants to know about Williamsburg, Virginia, and Charlottesville. And we talked about Charlottesville both times that we spoke before, but I haven't addressed Williamsburg, at least to her satisfaction, so I really apologize. And she keeps putting off her trip because she wants to hear my opinion. She's looking to retire there. Well, I can give you my opinion, but of course your opinion is most important and the one that matters the most. First of all, I would visit there definitely. It really helps to visit at a couple of times during the year. And we're getting into the beginning of spring and the end of winter. It's a good chance to see what it's like in the springtime. Definitely would try to visit it also in the summertime, the peak of the summer, say July, August, probably August, when it's hottest, when you know it's going to be hot. It sounds like you're on the East Coast. And so you'll know when hot weather is going to hit, and try to make a trip down there and see what it's like when the conditions are the worst, because that's really what you're going to have to live with. Now, on our Sperling's website, we're going to have something great coming up. We are going to have climate filtering. It's a new type of mapping. Our mapping guru, Nick Arnold, is working on that. And so we are looking forward to having that implemented maybe in a month or so, but it's going to be very powerful. What we've also worked on is having a 4-season climate index. And this is pretty important. Before we had it just for the summer months, then we tried to include everything in the climate. And that was okay to a point. But the problem is, if you say, what is the general climate? Well, you could have, say, somewhere like Seattle and Miami both having the same score, because Seattle might be a little problematical, being rainy and wet and overcast. And Miami also has its issues, which is overly humid. And so what happens, and too hot a lot of the times, and combined with humidity, it becomes pretty brutal. So they both have issues. And if you just make one climate score, then what happens is it mashes up and you don't get an idea of how they're different. Well, what we're doing is, what we've developed actually is a 4-season climate index, where we have 4 different scores for all the categories of the seasons of the year. So you'll be able to say, well, winter is great in Florida, summer not so much, and maybe vice versa in the Pacific Northwest. So you'll be able to look at those and get a much better nuanced idea. And then we're going to have all the data. When we have this interactive map, you'll be able to filter out different criteria and find the spots that are just right for you. So anyway, before I jump into Sandra's question, well, let's continue with Sandra's question. So she's already retired and wants to pick up some part-time work. And so what that tells me is you want to find a place with a decent economy. And this is really important, because places with a good economy are vibrant, they're growing, and they have enough resources that they can take advantage of what is going on, taking care of their citizens and taking care of the business of the city, paving potholes, putting in new roads, having great schools. They have enough money for parks and recreation, and people want to move there because the quality of life is great and businesses are growing. So a good economy is important. And to you, Sandra, what this means is you're able to find part-time work, because if the economy is growing and it's healthy and it's vibrant, then that means you'll be able to find a job and bring in that extra income. Now, of course, the opposite, well, there's such a thing as being too good of an economy. And when you have places that are so crazy great, then things get overheated. San Francisco, the economy is getting way overheated. And the housing prices are becoming, I think, unsustainable and unaffordable for almost everybody. And then you have places like North Dakota. They have just gone through a huge boom where the economy was so on fire that things basically melted down. The whole social structure of the area became very weird. People could make lots of money doing all sorts of things, and it did not pay to be a school teacher or doing restaurant help, that sort of thing. So when things are too good, you have this huge boom, and then comes a bust. But Williamsburg, Virginia, things are doing very nicely, thank you. And so things are healthy there, but they're not out of control. You don't want to get out of control. And what I like to joke about is it's like a party. You want to have a party where everybody's having fun, they're having a good time. When things get out of control, that's when things are really get crazy, and you have a big hangover the next day and a huge cleanup. So you don't want your area, wherever it is you're moving to, be crazy and out of control. Now, there aren't many places like that in the US where that's going on. The economy has been sort of simmering, in some cases like almost too flat. We haven't had really any inflation. There hasn't been a growth. There's been a really segmented, and that's what the presidential election was all about. We had a segmented society where some people were doing very well, a lot of other people not so much. And that led to a lot of discontent, a lot of unhappiness, and a need for change. So things are getting better, not for everybody, but you want to find the places where things are doing well, so you can take care of the people around you through your taxes, and they can take care of you with all the services and social services, the resources, the government that you need to have a great place to live. So Williamsburg is doing great in that area. Sandra was looking at a place called Newtown, where they have a mixed-use community, and was master planned. I think, master planned communities, and there's one called the Villages in Florida, which is a massive place. Over 100,000 people live there. It is almost, some people feel it's almost like kind of creepy in a way, sort of a Stepford Wives kind of zombie-like thing where everything is regulated. I can see that, and I can also see that in some cases it's almost like living in a Disneyland. That bothers some people. Other people, that's just what they want. They want some predictability, and they want some control, and they're happy to hand that over to other people. That may be just the thing for you. And I can see where this can actually create kind of a small town feel that is kind of a bastion or a protection against all of the issues and problems that are happening in the world today. That might be just the thing. You'll have to go ahead and take a look, talk to some people there. I don't know about Newtown in particular. I know that people are very fond, if they have the right mindset, they're very fond of a place like the Villages in Florida, which is a completely planned community. So I can see a lot of positives about a planned community. It might be right for you. And she said, She's asking, does Newtown have a good economy? Is it too isolated? I think she's talking about Newtown. Does it lack diversity of races and religions? I think, well, maybe she's talking about Williamsburg. I might email Sandra individually. We can talk about this because I feel bad that I've put off your questions and not had enough time to answer specifically. But she's also asking about Chattanooga and also about Richmond. I think Richmond and Chattanooga have a lot of positive to go with it. They are southern cities. It's a certain culture. Some people love it, some people not so much. Let's face it, we get used to sort of the culture and the people we have grown up with and are used to, and we miss that sometimes. Things on the West Coast are different than the East Coast. Things are different down south than they are in the Pacific Northwest or in the sort of the libertarian kind of mindset of Idaho and Montana. Very different from, say, New York City and Boston. Some people love it. Other people miss the sort of vibrancy of the Northeast or the larger cities, places like Chicago. I think Chicago doesn't get enough attention, by the way, enough love. I think Chicago is a great place to live. And just because we're talking about a big city, you can still live outside the city and still have all the amenities and the interesting things that a big city gives you, but you have the less expensive lifestyle of living outside. So we're talking about Chattanooga. I think Nashville has a lot going for it. Sandra mentions that I, quote, love Nashville. Yeah, I think Nashville is really great. I don't know if I love it. I don't know if I'd go that far and make it a top pick, but for some people it's especially great. And I think during our last session, we had someone whose husband was a jazz drummer. If he was going to move to Nashville, I'm sure he'd find lots of gigs, casual gigs, and maybe even some professional ones. An entire music culture, maybe more than any place in the United States that's going on. So a huge music culture there. I don't have anything specific about Chattanooga or Richmond other than that they're doing well these days. I was talking a little bit about Charlotte. I was in Charlotte and I was a little disappointed. I expected to be more impressed with Charlotte than I was. Last time I visited, took a drive, my wife Gretchen and I took a drive through the Deep South. We spent a whole month, 10,000 miles, and we had a wonderful time. So I urge everybody to do that. This is a great time of year to go traveling, by the way, around the southern part of the U.S., the Southwest. It's cool. It's not getting too hot. A lot of the storms are gone. In fact, get this. We're driving across country. We are leaving the Pacific Northwest where we hit just a minor, smallest snow flurries on our way across the Rockies. I think we're going to Salt Lake City. So we're in Wyoming, we hit a couple of snow flurries, and that's it. We didn't have any other rain for the rest of the trip for a full month on the road. Well, okay. We did hit some rain in Tulsa in the morning, and that was it. So I can't believe how lucky we dodged floods, torrential downpours, tornadoes, whatever it is. We managed to dodge it all, and we just got very, very lucky. I'd like to say that was part of our expert planning, but we can't really plan like that. So that was very fortunate. So what I would say is I think that Chattanooga and Richmond are very good. I was very impressed with Richmond. And like I said, Charlotte did not impress me simply because it seemed like much more of a larger city that was almost, it didn't really have much of an urban feel. It reminded me sort of Orange County, California, where it's sort of, yes, it had vibrancy and some business, but I didn't really get much of a feel there for its history and it just would be not a place that would be, maybe in my casual observation, it really impressed me as having a great sense of place, maybe because it's grown so fast there. But let's get on some other, well, let me reboot, let's dial back and get to sort of the top of the program. Welcome to Sperling's Best Places. I'm Bert Sperling, and I wanted to jump into Sandra's question before I forgot anything else. But I'm Bert Sperling, the Best Places guy, and I'm really happy you're with me today. I'm here in Portland, Oregon, doing our monthly webcast. Our website is bestplaces.net. So as they say, go to www.bestplaces.net, and you can see our free site that has a lot of information to help you find your own best place to live, work, and play. So what we have going, we have our new comfort index on the site. Please check it out. I think it's very valuable. As I mentioned, Nick, our mapping guy, is preparing a new interactive map where basically you'll be able to dial in exactly what kind of climate you're looking for and see the results change on the map in real time and zoom in on particular areas and find the places that are best for you. I don't think there's anything else like it on the web. I haven't seen anything like it, but it's very cool, and we're very excited about it. We're going to have a mobile app, and our mobile app is different, and we've spent a lot of time working on this. What we've done with our team is we're trying to figure out what is special about a mobile app. So what happens is when you're looking at a mobile app, you're probably in the car, you're probably on the go somewhere. You want to know about where you are. So what we've done is develop a series of indexes for everywhere that basically compares every spot where you are with every other place locally, and also compared to the state, and also compared to the US. Let's talk about housing prices, for instance. If you're in an area, let's say you're in the Chicago area, and you're driving around, you want to know how this particular spot where you are, you can look at your mobile phone, and we can tell you with an index and tell you instantly how the spot compares in affordability compared to every other place in the Chicago metro area. Or if you were thinking about the, let's say, like the Rockford metro area or other places in Illinois. So you're looking at your phone, you say, okay, well, how's this compare to the surrounding area? Well, we compare it to either the metro area. If you're not in the metro area, it'll compare to the whole county. Similarly, you can compare it to the state. How does this compare to the whole state? And how does this compare to the nationally? So can you imagine, like with air quality, something you might not have an awareness of, but we have a level from the government, a level of information down to the particular, even zip code and smaller, the tract area. We can tell you this particular area, how much particulate matter does this get, how much, what is the cancer risk, and what is the respiratory illness risk. And rather than give you some arbitrary number of 17.3, and you have to put that in perspective, we've created indexes for all of these. So you'll able to say, oh, compared to the rest of Chicago, this place is pretty healthy right here. Or if you drive a mile further, you might find just the opposite, might not be that healthy. So crime scores, everything, we've put it all into a mobile app. We're very excited to see that work and looking forward to having you try it out. Board game. We're doing a Best Places board game. How crazy is that? But you know, we love to play games. We've our family, our kids have grown up. Our two sons have grown up playing board games, and we still enjoy doing it. And board games are hot these days. So what we've done is we thought, what would be better than a Best Places board game? So basically, what it is you'll pick a profile of who you are and where you are in life, and then you'll go around to the different cities, or you'll choose to move to whatever cities you are. You'll draw an opportunity card. Maybe you'll say, you've been offered a job in Atlanta, and all your moving expenses are paid, and you get to start at this salary. and then you can buy or rent in Atlanta, and basically learn a lot about different places and also play the game to win. We're still trying to figure out what the win situation is. But we're working with some local folks here in Portland because for whatever reason, Portland being quirky and everything, it's become a pretty major gaming development area. So we're working on the Best Places game. I think it's going to be interesting. I know it's going to be fun. And we're looking forward to showing it to you. In fact, we're looking for testers. So if you'd like to be a tester for a board game, shoot me an email, and it'll be, let's see, what would be a good address? How about send it to Bertrand, BERTRAND, Bertrand at bestplaces.net. And we'll go ahead and put you on the list and see about getting you one of the test units, and we'd love to get your input on it and see what you think of it. Let's see. Ted is doing, of our team, is doing a fun project about interesting place names. You know, there are all these weird place names out there, like Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, or there's an accident, where's it? Accident, Pennsylvania. Anyway, there are all sorts of odd names. Ted is writing a description of those places and how they got their names. Ted is also a Hollywood screenwriter and specializing in comedy, and in fact has a movie coming out, and we'll tell you about that later. But in fact, well, you can go to IMDb or wherever, and the name of the movie is called Where's the Money? It's going to have Terry Crews in it, Method Man from The Wire, a bunch of cool people, a bunch of young, hip folks. And of course, so if they're young and hip, I don't know anything about them. But anyway, there's like Kevin Batchelor, I believe, and Kat Graham. And according to hip young people, those are very cool people on the upswing as far as their popularity. As I said, I don't know anything about those folks, but it's going to be a great movie, and we're looking forward to that coming out soon. So Ted is lending his screenwriting comedy talents to our list, and he's it's fun. It's a great read and a great take on interesting place names. So let's go ahead and get to some more questions. By the clock on the wall, I see it. It's already 23 minutes after. Boy, I can talk, and I'm just getting going. So let's see what we have. We have one from Renee. It says, my husband and I live near Portland, Oregon. We're looking for a place to retire. I should slow down. I can read this, but I'll have to read it slowly for you. My husband and I live near Portland, Oregon. We're looking for a place to retire, one that has a low cost of living, with a nice house under $300,000, and amenities such as a college, outdoor activities like kayaking or hiking, decent farmers market, good medical care, and others. They'd prefer a mid-sized city that's not too conservative. And they also want to stay on the West Coast because they have an elderly parent in Southern California. We've pretty much narrowed our choices down to Spokane, specifically the Liberty Lake area, Boise, or Chico, California. Partial to Spokane, but concerned about the winters for when we're even older. Yeah, it doesn't run the other way. We don't get even younger. We always get even older. So yeah, that's a problem. We're not fond of the desert, but we understand Boise has a lot of trees and green, so maybe. And why Chico? Because it's affordable for California, has a college, many parks, not too much traffic or crime. They've only visited Spokane, but they'll be making some other trips. So anyway, they wanted to know, get my take on it. You know, I did a deeper dive into Chico for you. Chico is located, oh, I don't know, 30 miles north of Sacramento, and it's about 15, 20 miles, 10 miles off east of the I-5 corridor. And actually, Chico, the first thing I want to look at when I'm looking into a place is the economy, because that tells me a lot about a place. If the economy is doing well, if it's vibrant, then other good things are going to happen. But if things are really suffering, it's really hard to sort of make that up, because it's a real issue on the social services, say fire, police, roads, parks, schools, social services for the elderly and the young. It's very tough to justify living in a place that is not doing well economically. Because even though you might not need a job, even though if you're retired or you have a job, you're working remotely, it's a hardship to work at, to live in a place where businesses are continually going out of business. There's shuttered storefronts. It's a depressed economy. If it's a depressed economy, it's often a depressing place to live. So that's just my thought about that. But Chico is really doing well. And I was looking at the economy, and for whatever reason, unemployment rate, it's kind of simplistic, but unemployment rate is a really good measure of basic vibrancy. Some people like to look at job growth numbers, but I've always found job growth to be kind of disconnected from how well other things are doing. I think maybe it's a longer term trend, but if you want to know today for a snapshot, take a look at the unemployment rate, and Chico is doing really well. I'm not quite sure why it's doing so well. It might be because of the college, but it seems to be very much better. In fact, I just want to pull up this here. When I go ahead and look at the unemployment rate in Chico, it is right near the average for California, which is very good. And it's interesting that the unemployment rate for the city is lower than it is for the metro area. And that's interesting. That tells me that the city is more vibrant, but not so much the surrounding area. But it's doing much better than other places in Central California, such as Merced, Bakersfield, Hanford, Yuba City, Fresno, Madera, and Modesto. Chico's doing much better than those places. Those places have not really recovered from the big housing bust. They all had inflated housing prices in 2006 and 7, and then fell hard and haven't recovered yet. And they still have, so they would have more of a challenge, let's say, when it comes to, say, livability and having some vibrancy. But Chico's doing really well. And I love the fact that it has a college. It's near enough to Sacramento. If you want a bigger city to go to, you can go to that. I didn't have a chance to look at the climate. Chico, I think, is going to be pretty hot. And when you get into the Central Valley of California, it is hot and dry and it can be brutal at times during the summer. There's some temperatures. I remember driving down I-5 when with our family when I was younger. Car did not have air conditioning. This was back in the old days. And I think I was getting heat stroke. I was seeing things. We had to pull off the road and go to a motel just to cool off. It was like 120 in Redding. And Redding is a little bit to the north of Chico. So it can get pretty brutally hot there. The rest of the year, pretty pleasant. So I think Chico is definitely worth a look at. You know, there's some other places that you might want to take a look at. Let's see if I had some things written down here for you. Let me see. Of course, I lost my paper. Yeah, nice. Well, so you live near Portland. You know about places like that here on the West Coast, but not sure where I'd put that. Anyway, what I would do is I would try looking at Coeur d'Alene. Walla Walla is also very good. Walla Walla has a really interesting sort of scene that's happening with their food and their wine. They have some world-class wineries in Walla Walla, and the restaurant scene is becoming very upscale and very notable, very notable indeed. We have a friend who has the White House Crawford restaurant in Walla Walla, and she's been telling us all sorts of interesting stories about the restaurant scene there. It is becoming, excellent chefs are leaving Seattle simply because Seattle's getting crowded and unaffordable at times, moving to places like Walla Walla and taking their craft with them. So anyway, interesting things are happening in Walla Walla. Let me see what else. I had a bunch of others written down that might be Tacoma. That is becoming sort of a hipster mecca. It became sort of a gritty place that it had a higher crime rate than Seattle. It was certainly very affordable, and it was sort of a place that had fallen on hard times. But now Tacoma has been discovered because Seattle is getting so unaffordable, and people are moving to Tacoma and making things happen there. That's an interesting spot. I've always liked Olympia as another one if you're looking for that. But I would definitely check out Walla Walla. Chico, I think, is definitely worth looking at. I've been very impressed with what I've seen on the statistics. I also took a look at the housing prices, by the way. That's another thing you want to look at. Look at the longer term. Housing prices in Chico are low for California. They're very affordable. Not so much compared to the Midwest, but for California, quite low. And it looks like they're coming back after the crash of say 2007 and 8, which is good. You want to be in a place that is recovering, but it hasn't gotten overheated. So I think it's definitely worth a look at. Let me see what else. And she says something interesting here. Is Boise significantly milder than Spokane, and enough to make living in a conservative state a tolerable trade-off? Well, that's the question, isn't it? You want to find a place that sort of fits for you. Boise is very much sort of, in some ways, it's sort of radically liberal. In other places, it's pretty conservative. I'd say more towards the conservative side. But when you have when you have liberal and conservative meeting around and they meet in the middle, and I think that's sort of libertarian. And I think that Montana, Alaska, Idaho, they all have this libertarian streak that is very appealing for some people. Other people, not so much. Religious-wise, there is a very strong LDS, Mormon congregation or Mormon presence in southern Idaho. That's important for some people, that they want to be part of the church there and feel like there's a lot of support for that. Took a trip through on our way back east through the Deep South. We stopped off in Boise for the night. Had an excellent, there was an excellent restaurant there near the co-op. I forget the name of the Italian place that we ate at. It was really great. One of the best meals. And we spent some time walking around the downtown. This was a Sunday night. This was Sunday, like at 4 or 5 o'clock. Things were jumping. I mean, things were hopping in Boise, and it could have been out of any sort of, cool place, maybe not San Francisco, but say Denver, places like that, where definitely they were starting to rediscover their downtown. So I think that has a lot of possibility. I would recommend Boise, but I would advise everyone to take a trip, whatever you do, spend some time. Hey, Airbnb. What you can do is something very affordable. If there's a neighborhood that you like, you can get an Airbnb place right in the neighborhood. You don't have to be out by the airport or wherever the hotels are, and see what that place is like and get a really good feel for it. In fact, if you're going to stay a week, you could stay a couple of days in one place, another in another one. And by the way, if you go to bestplaces.net, on every city, we have a little link. We get a small percentage of whatever you book, but it helps us pay the bills and keep the lights on, and pay folks like our great team, Dana Bridges, who's doing a great job with UI and UX, and Al Olson, who is doing our computer, working on the servers and the back end and keeping things running there. We have Bertrand and Ted and Gretchen, and Mike is back in Virginia working on revenue and trying to hold everything together so we can pay the bills. So if you go to our site, there's a link to Airbnb. We get a small percentage. We get a few bucks for everything you book. So please book on something if you're going to book through Airbnb. And I think it'll be a good experience and a great way to learn more about a place. So if it wasn't, I wouldn't be saying it. Let's see. Anne Marie says, hello, and thank you so much for your broadcast. Thanks. I'm single, very active, 68, and have very, very moderate needs. And she's going to retire in about 3 years and wants to live modestly in a warm climate with lots of active senior activities and arts and culture, and healthy, single, senior men. Any suggestion? Well, I would look where there is a pretty good place where older people are. Let's face it, people are going to vote with their feet. They're going to be moving to places where they are welcomed, and there's the infrastructure for them. And if there are more of them around, of course, you're going to be able to more likely find your senior single men and healthy as well. What I would do is look for a higher percentage of older people. Now you said healthy. That's important, because I'm a real believer in, if you move somewhere, if the people around you are unhealthy, you're probably going to get dragged down. I know I am. I used to think, okay, wherever I move, I'm still going to be Bert. I'm going to live my lifestyle and I'm going to stay healthy, or try to, or do what I do, you know, to be able to stay how I am. I'm not going to eat a bunch of donuts every day, pies, although they're delicious and I love them. I got to stay away from that stuff a little bit. But if all around me people are smoking, if they are drinking too much, if they have unhealthy eating habits, if people eat too much and that's okay, well, then I'm more likely to fall into that sort of mindset. We're all social animals. So what happens is, if you move to a place where people are healthier, it'll probably raise the bar a bit for you, and you're probably going to be a little healthier too. So, and smoking is another thing. You know, if everybody around you is smoking, and maybe that's something you've been trying to kick, or something that's going on there, you're more likely to smoke too. You think, hey, that's okay. I'll go ahead and have a couple of cigarettes or whatever. It won't hurt. But so look on our site, look for healthy places, and you're probably going to be healthier yourself. Now, what you here on the, let's see, warm climate with lots of senior activities, warm climate, and live modestly. Well, here's probably, living modestly is the trick, because basically the West Coast, pretty unaffordable. It is high priced. And the reason, like, Portland is growing so much, it was like the only affordable place left on the West Coast, and it is really getting expensive. So if you want your dollar to go further, we have a cost of living indicator on our site, and you can go ahead and look for places. It will tell you what the cost of living is in the various places around the country, and you can compare places against each other and find out how much cheaper some places are than others. It will be mostly housing prices. That's the single biggest category that's different from place to place. So look at housing prices, and we also have rental information on the different places. So I would say, let's see, warm climate. I like El Paso. I think El Paso is a really pretty cool area. It's dry. It doesn't have the humidity It doesn't have the crazy climate and the natural hazards of like Dallas or Houston. Um, it and it is a great spot for retirees. The economy is coming back very nicely. I would take a look at El Paso, and I think it's certainly hits the affordability category for you. So I would take a look at that. There are lots of other places around. I like the Fayetteville area. We'll get to that. And just looking at the clock, I don't want to run out of time. So anyway, I would do that. So Anne-Marie, thanks a lot for the question. Now, at the beginning of the hour, I said I think the political climate is affecting places to live. Now, let me just go ahead and something's getting at my eyes today, and have a drink out of my delicious. Everything tastes better out of a Sperling's Best Places mug. I'd like to say these are coming soon to Target, but I don't think so. But anyway, I enjoy it. So anyway, the political climate, I think what's happened, what we saw was they're basically, not only economically, the country is becoming sort of divided. We have people that are doing well with the economy growing. Other people, the upturn has left them behind. And that is very sad, and that's a source of frustration, as we've seen in our this last election. So we have a new administration in Washington, and what is happening is we are seeing that some of these things, some of the choices are left up to the states, which means if you feel strongly about something, say immigration, the idea of sanctuary cities, healthcare, they're going to be leaving more healthcare decisions up to the state and how the state is going to fund them. This could become a lot more important than it has been in the past. Where you live and how it affects you and your health and your quality of life. Not just your health, of course, but how you feel about where the nation is going. I think that the states and the cities, meaning locally, where you live, is going to have a greater importance and a greater impact on how you live and what goes on around you than it has in the past. So it's going to be very interesting. We're going to be tracking that on Sperling's Best Places, bestplaces.net, to sort of let you see how things are changing, which states are enacting different legislation, what states might be resisting some of the cutbacks that might be coming, and how it can affect you. So anyway, that's my take on sort of politics and how it can affect you. Basically, people are getting sorted out. People are sorting themselves. For instance, just some of the questions here we've had today. I want to live in a place that might be not so conservative, or I want to live in a place, one of the questions we have here, where can gay people live where they won't be harassed or bothered, and that's not in a big city? So here's someone asking about where can gay people live where they feel accepted and welcomed. I think we've all heard things on the news where there are issues as far as mosques and synagogues being targeted with graffiti and different harassment, that sort of thing. Experts are saying a lot of that is due to the political climate. And there are going to be places where that is not happening as much. And people are going to feel more safe. So I think what's going to happen is that our nation is going to continue the sort where like-minded people are going to be with other like-minded people, and that's going to be more important for them. So I'm sorry to see that. I would love for everyone to get together. But I will tell you something else also. What I noticed in our trip was we're driving around, I forget what southern cities there were, but maybe it was part of New Orleans. All of a sudden, we're in this hipster enclave, and it's a little neighborhood tucked in there. It's maybe about 6 or 7 blocks square. I forget the name. I'll have to go back to my notes and take a look at it. But all of a sudden, there's all the foreign cars like Fiats or Prius, um, Mini Coopers. And then there are the mothers are pushing the $600 strollers. Folks are walking around in skinny jeans and wearing hipster glasses. You know, not just the big black frames, but they're white plastic frames, which I thought was pretty cool. So and then the local bar is this sort of grubby sort of local dive bar type of thing. I realized what really there can be great places in any city. There can be an enclave, a neighborhood of sort of like-minded people. So basically, in this middle of a very sort of southern and traditionally southern kind of culture, all of these hipsters got together and found a community. This is not unlike what happened in large cities like New York or Philadelphia, Boston. People came over from Europe or other parts of the country and had their Little Italy, Chinatown, their Irish tenements, whatever, and they had their own. They felt sort of outcast. They needed to band together to be with people like themselves, and had these areas, these parts of town. So in the same way that I think there are these parts of towns that are sort of cool and hip and having a different culture than the rest of the town, which make it accessible for everybody else. I was reading some articles, and there was one, I think, either in Atlantic or the New Yorker, basically talking about how people were giving up. They wanted to live in New York City, but they just couldn't pencil that out and make it work. So they've moved to places like Cleveland. And there are some really neat places in Cleveland that are very, the neighborhoods they have tree-lined streets, they have older homes, they're beautiful places to live, and with a low crime rate, and they're just wonderful neighborhoods for families or individuals. And what people decided to do is get off the rat race that is a large metro area like New York City and find a great place to live, a great neighborhood with people like themselves or people that they want to be part of, a community they want to be part of in places. I'll bet in almost every city around the country, if you look, you can find a place where there are people like you and you're going to feel more welcome, more accepted, and more at home. You're just going to probably have to look a little bit harder because they're not going to be all over. But that's, I think, one thing that is very interesting and something that I've seen happening, these little enclaves or little mini neighborhoods of like-minded people. So anyway, I think that's a very positive thing. Getting back to this one question, says Patricia, where can gay people live where they won't be harassed or bothered that is not in a big city? That is a good question. There are places that have been identified. We don't do it on our site yet. We might do that. There aren't really any statistics. There are single same-sex households, which doesn't necessarily translate to gay or lesbian. Sort of, but not quite. There are statistics like that from the government, but we don't get into sexual, when I say we, the government doesn't get into and demographically into people's sexual preferences. But there are places that are, short answer, I don't know. There are definitely enclaves, there are hot spots. I'm not a good guy to ask about that. I do know a researcher in California, and we might, Gary, forget Gary's last name, but he is with one of the universities in Los Angeles, who has basically done a large study of that, an ongoing study, and I think it would be great to talk to him and see if he has some updated data on that. So I think that's something we'd like to put on our site. So someone here says they are looking for some great places. This is B and L, right? They've used our site many, many times, and they're looking for walkability, bicycling, sort of a beer, wine, art, coffee culture, a college or university, friendly, open, and positive people, not overtly religious or overly religious. And see, this is sort of getting in, and liberal leaning or 50-50 Democrat, Republican. Good traffic flow, so no traffic congestion, a vibrant downtown. They currently live in Sarasota, which I think is a very cool spot. They're looking to relocate it. They feel Sarasota is too large, too congested, expensive, and they think people are rude there. They'd like to find a community of 75 to 125,000 people. Housing affordability is important. Now that's leaves off a lot of the sort of the West Coast. Prefer downtown condos under $500,000. Okay, so these are places they've looked at. They've actually visited Apex and Cary, North Carolina. I wasn't impressed with Cary as much as I thought it'd be. It was sort of like Charlotte in that it was more, it seemed more like Cary seemed more like a suburb kind of thing rather than a city itself. In that area, the Triangle area, Raleigh, North Carolina, my pick is Durham. I really like Durham a lot. Had a really great feel to it. Asheville, North Carolina, they looked at. Traffic was horrible. Yeah, it does. It really gets caught up. They have hills there, and it's traffic, yeah, can be bad. Housing market is overpriced. Yes, it is. It's been called like the San Francisco of the South. And well, it's gotten very popular. And like San Francisco, the housing price is very affordable. Last time I was there, I was not as impressed as I hoped I would be. It was nice, and I love the Blue Ridge Parkway. That's an amazing resource. If you're driving around this time of year, take a trip on the Blue Ridge Parkway before it gets crowded during the summer. It's beautiful. Definitely recommend that. Henderson, North Carolina, crime isolated. Too religious. Germantown, Tennessee, too sleepy, no vibe. Overland Park, Kansas, close but not enough on our checklist. Also, the weather can be kind of brutal. Midwest can be extreme. It can go from very hot to very cold, lots of snow, wind, that sort of thing. And Gainesville, and they know all about Gainesville, but they thought it was too large, not a lot of housing choices. So the closest thing they think fits Fort Collins, Colorado, but they'd like to see less harsh winters and more affordable housing. Yeah, Fort Collins is an issue. Boy, wow, you're looking at some great places. And where should you move to? They asked. Well, there's the Ozarks area. That's very affordable. It might not fit with your sort of what you're looking for as far as your culture area. I took a trip in Bentonville. There's the new, is it Crystal Bridges, I think. The Walton family constructed a beautiful, beautiful new art museum called Crystal Bridges. And it certainly adds a lot of, it's a sort of an anchor resource for that area. But I think, yeah, I think you would not, I think it would fit in some cases, but not yours. Overland Park, Kansas, and was it Olathe? Kansas, I think, is another good spot. Manhattan, Kansas, maybe a little too small for you, but I would try that. I got to know a fellow from the New York Times who wrote in the retirement area. He wrote about retirement. His name is Fred Brock. Fred ended up leaving New York City and moving to Manhattan. I like to joke he left Manhattan, New York, to move to Manhattan, Kansas. And he found it to be quite pleasant there. He taught at the local university, and I forget whether it's Kansas State or University of Kansas, and I'm sorry, because I know I should not get those two confused, but for some reason I always do. So he was teaching at the college. He thought it was great. There was still adequate culture. In fact, you talk about living in a college town. That's really important, because you can move to a college town and still have things, a lot of the culture going on, arts and lecture series and visiting professors and that sort of thing. For instance, just a few blocks from our house here in Portland, I got to hear Ezra Klein, and at that time he was with the Washington Post, but now he's has the Vox.com. And I also got to talk to, what was his name? David K. Johnson. Got to hear him talk also here at Reed College. So and that's just a few blocks from our house. So if you have a chance to live in a college town, you'll get a chance to hear these really interesting writers, lecturers, and important speakers. I'll have to think about that. I'll do some thinking and I'll make some notes, and we'll see if we got something special for you. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Scott writes, we use your website constantly. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. Because we may need to move because of air quality issues. However, it is difficult to depend on our comparison listings, Sperling's listings, because there are no dates for information. And also air quality only shows a number from 1 to 100, which can be inaccurate and misleading in light of much more modern and accurate government summary reports in the last 10 years. So they're saying, could you list the year for the source and list the figures for the top 5 or 10 pollutants for each city or county? Great thought, Scott. And of course, that's something we want to do. And I think we have dates for everything, but we're going to build out. I've been doing a deep dive into air quality measures. Basically, there are actually very few air measurement units in every city. And well, not in every city. It's only the largest cities that actually have an air monitor that capture the air and then analyze it and then publish the results. That's called the Air Quality Index from the EPA. There are things called point source indicators where they have a factory, and the factories all have to indicate what kind of chemicals they're using and what gets released into the atmosphere. And they can build up models, analytical models, of how good the air should be theoretically based on the kinds of emissions that are happening. And so we have that data. We also have, and that's available down to a very small point. The air quality measurements I talked about from the EPA are only for the larger cities and only for just a few, 1 or 2 areas, and in even large cities, maybe 3 or 4 different monitors in the entire city. So that's kind of a problem. The point indicators, the point sources, are available everywhere, but that's just a hypothetical, theoretical model. What they've done in the last year, and this is really quite exciting, they have taken this information. This is what we would do if we had access to all the resources that the EPA have. They've taken all of these they've taken the actual air quality results, the monitor results. They've taken the point sources, They've looked at the amount of traffic, because the pollutants coming from the particulate matter coming from diesel smoke is probably the worst thing that we have for our air quality and for our health. So what they've done is they have created some very, very sophisticated models and put them all in a point score. And the points range anywhere from, like 2.17 to maybe, I think one scale goes up to maybe 123. Another one ranges from 40 and goes up to 800, which doesn't tell us much. We are remapping, transforming those numbers to our 1 to 100 scale. And what they've done is they have actually looked at the type of chemicals that are being released and the type of modeling or the type of point sources that they've modeled. And they are assigning a weight to how deadly those chemicals are. And what they now have is a respiratory health risk and a cancer health risk. So if this is like I said, an amazing resource, and it's very, very valuable. And even more so because, Scott, what you'd have to do if we were just going to put up our, say, a list of figures and told you how many, say, tons of particulate matter fell on a particular spot or was released into the air, you would then have to compare that with other places nearby, other places around the country, see how it rates. The EPA has now done this for us, and I forget what that's called. And Scott, if you wanted to actually go ahead and look at that, that is called, let me just look up here on my on our server here for all of that. And it is called the National Air Toxics Assessment Report. So if you wanted to go to Google the National Air Toxic Assessments Report and look for that data, that raw data, it gets it all down to even smaller than a zip code and tell you what the health risk is, the cancer risk, and the risk of respiratory illnesses. So what we're doing is we're converting that data rather than just giving you some numbers, which are sort of meaningless when they go from 200 to 123, or they go from 40 to 800. Those are sort of meaningless numbers without context. We're putting them in context with other places locally, within the state, and around the country, so those numbers will make sense. And maybe we'll even have the raw numbers so you can take a look at that and sort of verify that we're on the right track. But thanks for the recommendation. I think you're absolutely correct. There's so much we want to do a better job on. There's so much that we've done. Oh, it's 1:03. I can't believe it's really this late. Anyway, there's so much that we've done, but we want to do an even better job. So it's 1:03 here on the West Coast. It's 4:03 on East. I've overshot my time. I got off in the weeds talking about various things. Anyway, this is Bert Sperling. Check out our website, bestplaces.net. And there's a great, if you like what you see and if you find it useful, hopefully, really, please, the way that you can do something for us is write down what you think of your own place to live, so that can be shared with other people. Because as much as we know about every place in the US, you're the expert. Nobody knows as much as you do about where you live. And if you can share that with everybody else, that would be a wonderful gift. That would be worth more than anything. So this is Bert Sperling. Thanks very much for tuning in. And we will see you next month about this time when we're going to have another one. And I hope that you have a wonderful quality of life and a great month in the month of March. And anyway, enjoy the spring wherever you are. So we'll see you later.